Hi everybody, Sarah Cray here with Let's Make Art, and we do watercolor tutorials, a new one every single week. And this week we are doing Fancy Feather. Aww. Fun colors, you can make it your own. It's a great time.
It is. Makes me think of all the colors in the wind. That's what it makes me think of.
Oh my gosh, like Pocahontas?
Yes, 100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then she's like singing, and her hair starts going up in
And
feathers.
You see the feathers and the leaves in the wind.
And the leaves in the wind that are colorful. So we are going to do this project in 4 steps. So our very first step is we are going to paint the left side of the feather. Second step, we're going to paint the right side of the feather. Third step, we will put in the stem. And the very last step is just doing the white details. Also, if you want to start with the right side instead of the left, that's okay. Do whatever you want. Doesn't really matter. We're just going to do one side at a time. We are using 2 paintbrushes. We have around 2 and around 6. These are the Princeton Heritage 4050 series. Excellent brushes. If you need them, you can find them on our website, and we mainly use these 2 brushes for all of our projects. So get the brushes, that's what I'm trying to say. We are going to use 4 colors. So our very first color is tangerine. Our second color is black. Our third color is space blue. And then we have our white that came in the November subscription box. So I don't know if you can even see this, but put some down. Okay.
I see that you're also sporting our paint water cup.
Oh, yes, I am.
Can't really see it in the front. There we go. There it is.
This is your paint water cup to help for people who get confused on their drinking and their paint. I've done it. Can't tell you how many times I've drank my paint water or dipped my paintbrush in my coffee cup.
Yeah.
Did I still drink it? Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
If it was just a quick dip, I feel like these aren't toxic paints.
No, they're not. Kids could drink them. Wouldn't suggest it. Who knows what'll come out the other end.
Listen, maybe I shouldn't have said this. I'm saying a lot of things.
I'm so sorry.
Let's move on. Okay. So we are going to do the outline, and then the oath, and then the warm-ups, and then we'll get into painting, okay? You guys are free to skip through this part if you don't need any of those things. Okay, so this project came with an outline. If you have the subscription box or the kit, it comes included with graphite paper. Or if you don't have those things but you still want to paint along, this is free on our website. So great. Just go to the Fancy Feathers kit page, click on the outline, download it, and print it.
Why would you not at least check it out?
I don't know.
If it's free.
If it's free.
$3.
I tape my outline down to my paper, so then it won't move while I'm tracing. And then I take a pen or a pencil or a felt tip marker, whatever, and I just start tracing. And you want to put your graphite paper dark side down. So there's like a dark shiny side and a not shiny dark side. Yeah, Keaton?
I was trying to help you figure out what a not shiny dark side is.
This.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, great.
I was trying to help you phrase it differently, but it seemed like I had a question instead.
A matte
yes,
side.
matte.
Okay.
M-A-T-T-E.
So you're going to want to do like glossy or shiny side down.
Yeah.
And then whatever mark you make on your paper, that's going to transfer. If you're pressing really hard, you're going to get a super dark line. I'll press really hard and show you. That's how dark it can be. So don't press that hard because watercolors are transparent. You're going to see all of this stuff through your paint. So I try and do it just light enough that I could kind of see what's going on, but it's not distracting from the painting. So you can see this is a lighter pressure, that's a darker pressure. I'm going to trace it a little bit darker than what I usually would, just so you guys can see the outline on the video. But when you're at home, try and make it as light as possible. Also, we now sell light boxes on our website. If you just cannot handle the graphite paper and you're like really frustrated with it, you can just use a light box and like paint on that if that's easier for you, or just like trace it using the light box. So that's on our website as well. And I don't think they're very much. Do you guys know how much they are, the light boxes?
I want to say somewhere around $18.
Is that right, Alexis? Do you know how much the light boxes are?
They are 18, I think.
18 bucks for a light box, really?
Yeah.
That's a great deal.
No.
It's like as much as a kit. That's so great. Okay. Okay, I got my feather. And then just check it. Take it off when you're done. Outline is ready to go. Okay, now we are going to do our oath. So if you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And I promise to have fun.
Thank you. And I just like to start that way because sometimes, especially when we're painting with other people, we're just like, mine has to be the best, and if it's not, I'm going to be so embarrassed. And I just don't want you guys to even have to deal with that kind of stuff because it takes the joy out of it. You know what I mean? Okay, warm-ups. So we're going to go over two things today. We're going to go over a value transition and a color transition. Usually if you pay attention to our warm-ups, they don't change that much, and that's because we use very similar techniques in all of our paintings. We just apply them in different ways. So our first one is going to be a value change, and I just want to show you that with watercolor, if you want a value change, all you need to do is add a little bit of water. Now value is all about the lightness and darkness of a color, not about the actual hue. Does that make sense? Okay, so dip my paintbrush in my water. Tap it off the side so it's not dripping. Grab some paint, any color. And if you load your paintbrush with paint, you will get a darker value. So I'm like bathing my paintbrush in the paint, okay? Now with liquids, and we get this question a lot, you do add water to the liquids, but not initially. If I want a darker value, then I will just use the paint straight from the tube with the liquid, or the bottle for the liquid watercolors. And then if I want a lighter value, that's when I add water. So here's my dark value. And then I'm just gonna dip my paintbrush a couple of times. Right where I left off, I'm gonna keep on painting, and you can see that it's getting lighter. And you're gonna keep on going till there's like no color there. Now, if you're used to painting with acrylics or oils, you might look at this part here and be like, that is too light. But I'm telling you, if you want something to feel like it has form, if you want visual interest, you need to have a value range. So embrace the really lights, embrace the mediums, embrace the darks, okay? So there's a value transition. For a color transition, let's go from black to navy to blue. Okay, so I'm going to start off with black, and it's going to be the same thing here as we did the value, except we will be switching colors in between. So I have my black, and then I'm going to grab a little bit of blue, and then you're going to want to overlap it. And then I'm going to grab just the space blue by itself, give it a little bit of space, and then work it back into the navy.
I noticed that you started on the white paper before you went into the other color.
So what I like to do is, the reason why if I give it a little bit of space when I'm transitioning is because I want an area to stay, whatever color I put down, I want an area to stay pure blue. And I'm kind of mentally reminding myself, this is going to be my pure area where I'm not going to let the colors mix, okay? So this, in this space mentally, this is where this blue is going to stay. And then when I work it back into my navy, I can work this area back and forth, but I kind of know to not go any further because I need to keep some of that color, that pure color. You don't have to do it that way. You can go straight from. So if you wanted to do black, and then right where you left off, do the more blue, like that, and then just keep on grabbing and pulling, you can absolutely do that. And again, I just want to say that there's different ways to do these same techniques. I'm going to show you how I do it. However, If you found a way that's easier for you or simpler for you or makes more sense, do it that way. I'm not one that's like, you have to do it this way or else it's trash. Like, I don't believe that at all. So I'm just showing you how I do it. If that doesn't make sense at all, don't do it that way. You can figure it out a different way, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, all right, so let's get started with step one, which is we're gonna paint the left-hand side. We're gonna do some color and value transitions across this whole thing, but before we start, I just want to reiterate that you can change the colors and you can change how you put them in and you can change the values. You can make this your own. I won't be offended if you change it. I want you to change it. I want you to make it your own, so not a big deal. But I'm just gonna dive right in. So, so it's gonna start with like a darker blue, and then it's gonna I'm gonna add a tiny, tiny bit of orange in there to give like a slightly like turquoise color. So I'm gonna start at the top. I'm gonna grab some space blue. I'm gonna mix a tiny, tiny bit of black in there to just make it darker. I don't wanna do too much black because then that will kind of have strong undertones of gray. So I like to start with putting my dark in first. So I'm just gonna kind of going along the edge of it here. And then after I do the top bit, I'm gonna just grab some water and start spreading that color down. Now you can always layer this too, and I might have to go back and do another layer of that dark navy on top. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, now I want to kind of have it transition slightly to green. So I'm gonna grab some of this space blue and a tiny, tiny bit of orange. And if I just do a little bit, it's gonna have this really pretty like desaturated green color, kind of like sage almost. And I'm gonna start putting that in kind of near the stem. Now, if you are paying attention to, color wheels and color theory, blue and green are actually complementary colors. So if you mix them together, you should get brown. But this is where color temperatures come into play. So because this blue does not have purple undertones, and because this orange has yellow undertones, it will, when you mix it, it can mix a slight bit of green. Now, if this orange did not have yellow undertones, like as strong as it does, if I mixed blue into just like straight orange with no yellow undertones, it would turn to mud. So if you're using different colors than what we send you, that could be happening to you, and if that's getting you frustrated, then maybe mix different colors or use a different color palette. But that's why like not all, like the rules aren't like blue and orange always make brown, because it depends on the color temperature of the color when you're mixing. Okay, so I'm just gonna keep kind of spreading this. Isn't that green just really pretty? I love how that green turned out.
It looks like it needs a nice warm cup of hot cocoa with it. That's just what it makes me think of. It's like a cool green.
Can you relate to that green a little bit right now? Kenan's like, if I was a color, I would be that green. And I would be drinking some hot chocolate. Okay, now I'm gonna go back and introduce the navy on the edge again and kind of repeat that dark edge here. And if you want to go back and kind of do another layer on the top, you can, or you can wait. It doesn't really matter. Okay, and then I'm just going to grab a little bit of water, move this color around, spread it. Now, and this will be, as you guys are painting this part, I'll tell you this tip now. which is the white is going to show up better on a darker background. So you can see here in my reference photo, I have white details down here. You can't see them very well because the value is so light behind it. Whereas up here, where my values are really dark, that white pops a lot. So if you want the white to pop more across the entire thing, then make sure your background color on your feather is a dark value, and that white will pop more. But I kind of like the value variation on my feather, which is why I did it. Okay, I'm going to put in green again. And then down here, I'm going to kind of keep it that really, really light value. I'm not going to put any of that dark navy on the edges down here. Maybe grab a slight bit more of the orange, just little highlights here and there. Okay. And then now that my entire left side is painted, I'm going to go back in and kind of darken up just some of the areas. And if you want to switch to your round 2, because you want the edge of your feather to be really fine, like real feathers are, that might be helpful for you. So if I switch to my round 2, I can get some really thin lines kind of poking out here.
This is going to sound like it's coming out of left field.
Yeah.
But it's interesting what you forget when life just gets going. I used to read about birds every day, and I used to have an entire book of like just bird facts, different birds that lived in different states. Mm-hmm. I just love birds. And this feather made me remember that.
Remember how much you love birds?
Yeah, I love birds.
What is it about birds that you love?
I don't know, I just think they're incredible. They weigh nothing. Sometimes they're huge, like owls. Owls are big and chubby. There are owls that burrow into the ground.
Really?
Yeah. Then there's the great horned owl, and he looks cool. Then you got the bald eagle. Their wingspan can be like 6 foot. You know, it's just, birds are incredible.
They are incredible. I like how colorful they are. Well,
Me
it
too.
can be too. It's pretty
Tropical
fun.
birds are really neat.
Okay, and then down here kind of at this part, if you look at feathers, sometimes like right where the feather area meets the stem right here, there's like a bunch of like little tiny flyaways that curl up a little bit. So I'm just going to take my dark colors and my round 2 and kind of just follow a little bit of the outline on a couple of them and just darken some of them. All right, that's step 1. Now we're going to move on to step 2. Now step 2, the right side has definitely a stronger orange area. Again, you are free to leave that out. So I'm going to start with this blue. And you can see here that these chunks of feathers, and feathers are a really good example. You know how I've said, like, when you're painting lots of little things, that they tend to kind of chunk up together. Hair, leaves, and this feather is a good example where these are all individual strands, but they do chunk up. Here's a chunk right here. And they can chunk up to be a smooth edge instead of like having to paint each individual hair. So this is a good example of how sometimes lots of little things can go in the same direction, which can create a smooth line and larger chunks, okay? So that's what's going on over here. It's like the individual feather hairs chunked up together to make a bigger chunk, and they're kind of overlapping each other. And if you find a feather outside, please wash your hands after touching it, but you can pick it up and you can see and you can almost manipulate and like make different chunks and have them move and things like that. And it's really helpful to kind of have a tactile play with some things when you're learning how to paint or draw them, because then you understand how they work. So I'm going to kind of leave a little white line around the chunks so I don't lose them, so I know to go back in and darken them. Now I'm going to introduce the green. Now you want to make this transition a little bit smooth. So I'm going to start by putting the green in, and then I'm going to start by putting the yellow in, and then I will put in that straight orange. But you want to make sure you give your colors a little bit of space to have that color transition from blue to green to yellow to orange. And remember to grab some water to help spread the color out. You can always do another layer if you want it to be darker in value or super saturated. Okay. And then I'm going to start transitioning back to the blue. So I use a little bit of water to make it kind of yellow. Now I'm going to start adding some green. And then I'm going to bring in some blue again. Now I'm doing this fairly quickly. I know that if you're not as comfortable painting, I might be going too fast for you. Just know that it's okay if you're not going as fast as I am. I'm trying to work a little bit faster since these are color transitions, and I want them to kind of like not have such hard lines in between, so I'm going to try and work a little bit faster. If you're not quite there yet, don't stress. Just put me on pause until you're ready. You're free to use that pause button whenever you need to, and just go at your own pace. Okay, and then I'm going to start doing kind of this pure space blue down here.
I'd like to issue a challenge though.
Yeah.
Even if you are feeling behind, just push through, power through.
Yes.
Try to keep up with Sarah.
Try and keep up, and that's going to do two things for you. One, if you're the type of person that's afraid you're going to mess it up and you're just like hemming and hawing and not sure what brushstroke to make, if you paint fast, you don't really have time to freak out. So if you're stressing about every single brushstroke, paint fast to push through. The second challenge, or the second reason why it's good to paint fast, is you have to make decisions quickly, which means that you have to be able to, it like teaches you how to look for different things and pick them up quickly so you can translate that onto your paper. And the more that you're able to look at something and realize what's actually going on instead of what your brain is telling you it thinks it's going on, the easier it will be for you to communicate on a two-dimensional surface what you're actually seeing. So it's great practice. Usually if you take a painting or drawing class, they have timers and time limits. We had to do that many a times, and it's very helpful. So try and keep up if you want to.
We've had a couple timers on a couple videos.
We did. And we didn't get a backlash, actually.
No, we didn't. I know. Did we do one for the stars on the flag, or was that?
No, we did it for the hydrangeas.
Hydrangeas, that's
Yeah.
what it was.
Yeah, and I was afraid that we would make people mad because I was like, 2 minutes, paint this balloon ball. But it was fine. At least we didn't get any angry comments anyway, so. Okay. And then this little chunk, I'm going to kind of have it transition up to from blue to green from orange to green to blue. But you can see that because I didn't allow enough room for the full color transition like I did here, I kind of sped it up, that turned more into mud Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you can do it like one on top of another, like go from orange to blue without like the green and the yellow in between. It's more likely going to turn brown, but sometimes that's okay. This feather actually is brown probably in real life, so.
But this isn't real life. This is your world.
But this is your world, so maybe you're like, I'm anti-brown feathers or not, you know? You can do whatever you want. This is your world you're painting. Okay, and then kind of on these little chunks that are sticking out, I'm going to make those a darker blue. And again, you don't have to do this. If you have another idea of how you want it to go, do that idea. And if you want it really, really dark, add a little bit of black in there. That's why I put black, is because if you're going for that kind of navy color, I put some black in there for you to mix. And I'm going to switch to my 2 to do some of these feather ends. Just make sure, I had blue on my brush and I was about to do the ends over here, but they are orange. So make sure you rinse your brush in between if you're doing different parts of the feather. Now, I would also like to point out that you can see here that I'm getting some blooms, and this one actually turned out really cool. Blooms are just different drying times. So if you do a wet layer and then you let it dry for a bit and then you go back in and try to blend an area or add another layer of water, when they meet, they're going to create a hard edge. I personally love blooms. I think they make things very visually interesting. There's always an element of accidental art. You never know how it's going to totally end up. And I will say that the Canson watercolor paper has a tendency to bloom easier than other watercolor papers. So if you're the type of watercolorist who you cannot stand blooms at all, first of all, that's okay. It's fine. I love them. Keenan loves them. They're kind of our favorite part, but we know that it's all about personal preference. So if you're just not the type of person that loves them, try a different watercolor paper. Usually a heavier weight, 100% cotton, like we also sell arches on our website. It's kind of more, it's kind of difficult to get blooms on arches and get those hard edges. So that's just a little tip for you guys if it's just driving you nuts. And I want to say that if you're getting them, you're not doing anything wrong. You're not a bad watercolorist. A lot of times, actually, when I'm painting, I do them on purpose because I love them so much. Because they're so, like, look at this green and this orange line. Can you get a detail shot of that?
Yes.
Because it turned out so cool, and I'm not going to touch that area because it did something that I didn't really mean it to do, and I love it. Can they see that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So have fun with things like that. And this is where watercolor is really frustrating for some people because they want to be able to control every single element, but a lot of it is just letting it go. Okay, we finished step 2. Now we're going to move on to step 3, which is the stem. So I'm going to do kind of like that dark blue color or that navy color for the stem. And then we'll move on to our last step. So I'm going to switch to my 2. I'm going to grab some space blue. I'm going to grab a little bit of black and mix that together. And if you need to turn your paper, it's easier for me to do thinner lines if I go horizontally. So that's why I like to switch my paper on this side. If it's easier for you to do it vertically, keep it vertical.
I was actually thinking about how neat it would look if you did this whole thing horizontally, but made it inside the feather shape, a setting of like a sunset in the sky.
Keenan, that's a great idea.
Wouldn't that be really neat?
Yes, there's actually this artist that she was a teacher on the Watercolor Summit. Her name is Trupti, and she did a couple feather projects where they're on their side, and then this part turns into wings, and then it's like birds flying away.
Yep.
Yes, Alexis.
There was a video I saw over the weekend of this guy. He was like literally drawing like it was a printer. So he would start from the top and then go all the way down.
That's cool.
That is cool.
Pretty.
So just, again, I love, and you'll see in our wolf, our Galaxy Wolf, I think it's so fun to take silhouettes and then do different things inside the silhouettes or to transition from one thing to another. So anyway, stem. Grab your round 2. And I'm just going to do a thin line, so light pressure, kind of following the shape. Now when it gets to the top, it's going to kind of meet. On the bottom part though, we will leave the middle kind of white. I'll blend that just a little bit, but that's because if you look at the stems of feathers, they have like a plastic quality to them. And so I kind of want to have a little bit of shine on the bottom part. On the top, it's just going to meet and be a dark line. Okay, so now I don't want to leave it like this because this kind of just looks outlined. So I'm going to soften up the edges a little bit, just using water, so it doesn't feel like just an outline. But I am going to leave a little sliver just white if I can. If you can't, it's not a big deal, but if you can, try and leave just a tiny bit of white just for glare. Okay. And then the stem itself, I did in a really light value. Except the bottom, I put a little bit of a darker piece on the bottom. Blend that up a bit. And then if you want to kind of like do some dark edges that kind of come out from your stem a little bit, you can. If it's feeling a little too blocky, sometimes I like to just blend it out a bit. Okay. All right, that's step 3. Now we're ready to move on to step 4, which is just our white detail parts. Now the reason why I didn't include this in the outline is because I really want you guys to have the freedom to do whatever you want on the outline. I know that there are probably some of you who are not ready yet or feel comfortable doing freehand stuff and not following an outline. And for those of you, then I'm sorry that I didn't do the outline, but still try it and, you know, just go for it. This is how you learn, by just pushing yourself a little bit more than you usually would. Now, you do want to make sure that your feather is dry before you do the white stuff. And for those of you who've never worked with this white before, it's going to be thicker like a paste, and you add a tiny bit of water to thin it down so it you can paint with this. You can also use acrylic paint for this. If you have white acrylic paint, you can do the same thing. Also gouache. So, yep, that's...
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Or in reverse, you could do masking fluid.
Absolutely. You can do masking fluid first with your designs, let that dry, paint your wash, and then let that dry, peel off the masking fluid, and all of those masked areas will be white, which is really cool.
Yeah, masking fluid confused me so much when I didn't, before I tried it, I was like, what? How did they do that? How's the paper still there?
Yeah, so they essentially do the same thing. For me, I like doing the white on top because with masking fluid, how do I say this? I feel like I can get thinner lines easier painting on top with a paintbrush and white paint than using masking fluid and a paintbrush. But there are masking fluid pens which allow you to get really thin lines. Yeah. Whoa. I know. Yeah, they're pretty cool. We've looked at carrying some on our website and different things like that. So that's actually why I prefer the white over, just because I feel like I have a little bit more control over what I'm doing. But maybe you're like a masking fluid professional and you're like, this is way easier for me. And then do it that way. There's nothing wrong with it. So I'm just kind of doing leaves, and I did, that one's bigger. I'm going to do a thin one coming this way. Again, you don't have to follow what I'm doing exactly. I'm kind of just filling in space. Now, another thing that I would like to remind you, because I think we'll probably fast forward through some of this, because you guys can just look on your reference photo of what I'm doing. But your white, so I add a little bit of water to help thin it down. If you add too much water, then the white is no longer opaque and you will see a lot of color underneath the white. If that's happening to you, don't stress out. You can keep on going. You can always do a second layer on top. So if you paint it and you're like, oh, okay, and then you look when it dries and you see a lot of color underneath and you want to keep it really white and not have color underneath, then just do another layer of the bleed-proof white on top. And that should make that white brighter. Sorry. I'm like painting details and talking at the same time. So it's like your brain kind of switches back and forth, which is true. These are different parts of your brain. You're speaking and you're like focus detail are different parts. So that's why some people cannot talk while they're doing like super concentrating on fine details.
I'm one of those people.
So that's why sometimes I will just stop talking for a second.
I sometimes speak and realize I don't know what I'm saying. So
all the time. I didn't realize it until
until I try to figure out where I'm at.
It wasn't as obvious for me until we started recording everything that we say. And then I'm like, man, I just talk
just comes out
without knowing what I'm saying most of the time.
It's so natural.
And I just keep talking till I find my way back to what I was saying. Isn't that Michael Scott?
That's what I was just going to say.
Okay, and a quick little thing on leaves if you never painted a leaf before. Sorry, I realized that this could be your very first project with us. If it is, welcome. Welcome to us. And then to do leaves, what I like to do is I kind of just outline them first and then fill them in. And I try and have my leaves have a thick middle and then narrow at the top and the bottom. If your leaves are looking... Keenan, why are you laughing so hard?
You said, welcome to us. And I can't get out of my head. Welcome to us.
To us.
Just giggling in the back.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Welcome to Let's Make Art. Yeah, I guess welcome to us doesn't make sense.
I mean, it makes sense. Super funny.
When you understand that painting with us is an experience, it makes more sense.
It's a trifold. I only know one part, but it's trifold.
Okay, anyways, leaves. Narrow. And sometimes if you're new, and I remember our very first tutorial, I had someone paint with us, and she was so frustrated because her leaves were looking like pickles. And that's because they just didn't have a narrow point at the top. So you can always reshape your leaves if they're looking pickly. You can just add a little point to them. So I'll complete one side and then we'll probably fast forward through the other. Do you think that's fair? Or should we just do it all? Because we fast forward a bit more through the pumpkin than we usually do. And I don't know if that was good or bad.
The pumpkin had multiple like angles. This is kind of, it's
Yeah.
just two-sided.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Again, I'm getting towards the lighter value part on my feather, so these white areas are not going to show up as much as right here on the top. Just reiterating that that is the nature of painting on different values with white. And if you want to like do, I think it's called Zen Tangle, is that right? The different like designs, like it's, yes, okay, Alexis, thank you. Keenan's face was like, I don't know
what
Alexis
you're asking
here. She's
me.
like, yes, that's the right word. You can like do like dots and follow the shape. You can do different patterns on different sections. You don't have to do this leaf pattern, which is partly why I didn't include it in the outline, because I wanted to give you guys freedom to do whatever you're interested in painting on top and kind of stretch and work your creative minds a little bit. And like Keenan said, where it's like, it would be really cool to do a beach scene, or, you know, is that what you said, beach scene? Sunset. What did you say?
I remember saying something, and that it'd be really great.
It was a sunset.
It was a sunset.
And a
Okay.
sky. Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes sense, because that orange and the blue.
Yeah. So I like seeing what you guys come up with. It's so fun. And if you're like, how do you see what we come up with? Well, we have a wonderful Facebook group called Let's Make Art Watercolor that people go to post their work and their own versions and ask questions. It's a really great community. It's called Let's Make Art Watercolor. Did I say that already?
You did.
Oh, good. Well, I said it twice.
I have a feeling you'll say it again.
Probably at the end when I always say it.
Yes.
That's it. Oh, I've seen a couple questions about rinsing, like brush care, because watercolor brushes are a little bit more, you have to be a little bit more careful with them, so I wouldn't suggest using watercolor brushes for acrylic painting or oil painting. You can absolutely use the white that we include with this. Just make sure you rinse it a decent amount. And I always hit it off the side of my cup. If there's any color residue coming off, then I know that it's not actually rinsed. And then after I kind of hit it off, dry it and lay it down to dry. And that's it. Okay. All right. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with for this project. I'm sure there'll be a ton of different versions because we mixed our colors. They're all going to be different from each other. So if you're on Instagram, you can share it with us at Let's Go Make Art or hashtag Let's Make Art. Facebook, same tags. Or you can join our watercolor group that I was talking about earlier called Let's Make Art Watercolor. Just again, supportive community. It's just about being able to share what we're making because we learn best when we notice how other people do it. And I know it's really scary to post your artwork, but the more you do it, the easier it is. And again, it's all about that learning experience. So there is that. If you need any of these supplies, you can find them at letsmakeart.com. I think that's all I gotta say at my end of the year spiel, end of the tutorial spiel. I'm always out of breath at the end, especially with this thing smushing my lungs. No, my pregnant belly. My son, actually. Okay, that's it. Bye.